I was standing in the hallway when I heard it. Not snooping. Not eavesdropping. Just frozen. One hand gripping my husband's dry cleaning, the other shaking slightly as his voice echoed through the speakerphone. "She's going to lose it," a woman said, laughing. "I'll put 1,000 on it. Full breakdown the moment you announce her resignation." My husband laughed back. Casual. Easy. Like this was sports betting, not my life. "Women like her always do," he said. Another voice chimed in, his business partner. "Double or nothing. She cries before dessert." December 27th. 4 days before the New Year's gala. 4 days before they planned to erase me from the company I helped build. I stood there, breath shallow, the plastic from the garment bag cutting into my palm. I didn't move. I didn't interrupt. I didn't make a sound. I just listened. And in that moment, something inside me didn't break. It clicked. But this didn't start in that hallway. It started 3 years earlier, with champagne and promises in a glass-walled conference room overlooking downtown Chicago. Back then, my husband, Ethan, had just landed the biggest client of his career. What no one applauded was the fact that the client came through me. My network. My reputation. 15 years in corporate consulting that I'd built long before Ethan ever dreamed of running a firm. When he suggested we merge our companies and our lives, it felt like fate aligning neatly into place. We signed contracts and toasted with overpriced champagne. My name went up on the office door next to his. Equal partners. Or so I thought. The first year was everything I believed in. We debated strategies, split meetings, shared wins. My voice mattered. My signature carried weight. The shift was so slow, I barely noticed it. "Let me handle that account," Ethan would say. "You're better with the creative side." Creative. That's what he started calling my strategy work, the same work that built nearly half our client base. I told myself he meant well, that marriage meant compromise, that maybe this was what support looked like. So I adjusted. I accommodated. I shrank, quietly. By year 3, my name was still on the door, but my voice had vanished from the boardroom. Ethan spoke for both of us in meetings. He introduced me as my wife, who helps with operations. Helps. Like I hadn't built a 7-figure consultancy before I ever met him. His partner, Logan, made it worse. At dinners, they joked about letting the wives think they're in charge. Logan's wife would smile tightly and refill everyone's wine. I changed the subject and pretended I didn't hear, but I heard everything. One night, Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter while I reviewed quarterly reports. "You'd be lost without me," he said, swirling his scotch. "I closed the deals. You just organize things." I looked up. Calm. Precise. "I brought in 40% of our revenue last year." He smiled, the kind of smile that makes facts feel embarrassing. "Sure," he said, "but who sealed the contracts?" Then he kissed my forehead and walked away. I stared at the spreadsheet I'd built from scratch, the cursor blinking like it was waiting for me to admit something. That was the night I stopped arguing and started watching. Because when someone is that confident you'll never leave, they stop hiding what they take. And they never notice when you start preparing to walk away. The affair wasn't dramatic. No lipstick on collars. No late-night confessions. Just a single notification lighting up Ethan's iPad while he was in the shower. A name I didn't recognize. 3 red hearts. A message that said last night was worth the risk. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I took a screenshot, emailed it to an account Ethan didn't know existed, and placed the iPad back exactly where it had been. Same angle, same smudge on the screen. Then I started dinner. That's the part people never believe later. That you can uncover betrayal and still ask, "How was your day?" Like nothing happened. But shock doesn't always scream. Sometimes it goes silent. Over the next few months, I built an archive. Hotel receipts tucked into jacket pockets. Client calls that always rang the same number. A travel-sized perfume in his gym bag, something floral and sweet, nothing like me. Every piece went into a cloud folder labeled Tax Records 2019. Ethan never looked at anything old, or boring, or mine. But infidelity alone wouldn't protect me. In our state, It barely moved the needle in divorce proceedings. Tears and betrayal don't outweigh contracts. What I needed was leverage. That's when I reopened the partnership agreement. The one we'd signed 3 years earlier in that champagne-filled conference room. The one Ethan had drafted himself, proud of his legal instincts. Too proud to hire an actual attorney. I'd signed it on our wedding day, dizzy on love and momentum, believing partnership meant permanence. Reading it now, alone, clear-headed, I saw what he'd missed. A clause buried deep in the language. Decision-making authority in the event of dissolution. Whoever initiated separation proceedings first had a 72-hour window to restructure asset allocation. Ethan wrote it assuming he'd always be the one in control. He never imagined I'd be the one to pull the trigger. I took the document to my sister, Claire, a corporate attorney in Boston who had never trusted Ethan's charm. She read the clause once, then again, then a third time. Finally, she looked up. "He handed you the keys," she said slowly, "and forgot to lock the door. We spent weeks preparing. Every asset traced. Every shared account documented. My premarital contributions calculated down to the cent. Claire brought in 2 specialists in corporate dissolution. Together, they built a strategy so tight there would be nothing left to argue. I hid everything in plain sight. Legal folders labeled vendor agreements. Drafts named insurance updates. Timelines buried inside spreadsheets Ethan never opened. He didn't snoop. He didn't worry. He thought I had nothing worth finding. Meanwhile, I played my role perfectly. I organized his calendar, smiled at his jokes, nodded while he explained strategies I'd taught him years earlier. He relaxed into my silence, mistook it for surrender. The New Year's gala was his idea. A celebration of the firm's best year yet. A year largely built on a client I personally managed while Ethan played golf with Logan. That night, he planned to announce a restructuring. A clean word for pushing me out. They'd offer me a consulting title. No authority. No decision power. Just enough to make it look graceful. I found out by accident. Ethan left his laptop open while he took a call in the other room. An email sat front and center. Subject: Fresh Start Plan. I read it in under 30 seconds. The announcement. The timeline. Prepare responses for concerned clients. Near the bottom was a line that stopped me cold. She'll be upset, but she'll accept it. She always does. I closed the laptop, made tea, sat by the window and watched snow fall onto the quiet street, and felt something settle into place. Not rage, not heartbreak, something colder, cleaner. If he wanted to make announcements at the gala, so would I. The next 4 days were the calmest of my life. That surprised me. I expected nerves, panic, second thoughts. Instead, I slept deeply for the first time in years. Every morning, I reviewed checklists Claire and I had built, documents scheduled, filings queued to trigger automatically at midnight on January 1st. The moment the calendar turned, the dissolution clause would activate. Before Ethan even realized the ground had shifted. He noticed nothing. That was the strangest part. He hummed while shaving, talked about champagne brands for the gala, practiced his speech in the mirror, adjusting his smile like a politician. I nodded, smiled, played my role. I chose my dress carefully, deep emerald green. Ethan once told me it made me look too serious. That felt right. I had my hair done, got a manicure, watched my reflection with detached curiosity, like I was observing a woman about to walk into a storm she'd already mapped. Armor doesn't always look like steel. Sometimes it looks like silk and composure. The ballroom glittered that night. Fairy lights, crystal glasses, 300 guests moving through the space with practiced laughter. Clients, colleagues, industry friends who'd watched the company grow. Ethan worked the room like he owned it. Logan followed behind him, laughing too loudly, slapping backs, radiating the confidence of men who had never faced consequences. I circulated separately, accepted compliments, discussed holiday plans, smiled when people mentioned how strong the year had been. Several clients pulled me aside. Quiet words, sincere thanks. You carried that project when everything went sideways. We wouldn't be here without you. I tucked each comment away like receipts. At 10:30, Ethan clinked his fork against a glass. The room hushed. He stood at the front, Logan beside him, both wearing the same expression, practiced warmth layered over certainty. Thank you all for being here, Ethan began. This year has been incredible for the firm. Applause. And as we move into the new year, we're making some strategic changes. I took a slow sip of sparkling water. My wife has been an incredible partner, he continued, but she's decided to step back from day-to-day operations to focus on other opportunities. 300 heads turned toward me. Polite applause started. Hesitant. Confused. Ethan's smile widened, waiting for me to nod, to accept the narrative, to disappear gracefully. I didn't. I set my glass down and walked forward, heels clicking against marble. Applause fading into silence. Ethan's smile flickered as I reached the microphone. Thank you, I said calmly. You're right. There are going to be changes. I reached into my clutch and pulled out an envelope. Ethan's eyes locked onto it. Effective midnight tonight, I continued. I've initiated dissolution proceedings under Section 4.7 of our partnership agreement. The silence was absolute. The clause you wrote yourself, I added, looking directly at him. The one that grants the initiating party restructuring authority. Logan shifted beside him. Ethan swallowed. You can't. It's already filed, I said. 2 hours ago. Phones buzzed around the room. Ethan's. Logan's. A ripple of realization spreading outward. What this means, I said, turning to the crowd, is that the firm will continue operating under new leadership. I'll be assuming control of all client relationships I personally developed. I paused. Approximately 60% of our current revenue. Ethan's face drained of color. You bet I'd cry before dessert, I said quietly, leaning closer, so only he could hear. But I don't cry over things I already finished grieving. Then I handed him a second envelope. These are the divorce papers. His hands didn't move. The room didn't breathe. And for the first time in years, he had nothing to say. Ethan stared at the envelope like it was written in another language. His mouth opened. Closed. Nothing came out. Logan recovered first. He always did, loud confidence covering panic. Now hold on, he said, stepping forward. This is completely inappropriate. You can't just hijack a company in front of... Actually, a voice cut in from the side, calm but firm. She can. I turned. So, did everyone else. It was Maya, Ethan's executive assistant. For years. Efficient. Invisible. Always underestimated. She walked toward us holding a thin folder, her hands steady. I've been keeping records, she said, placing it on the nearest table. Client meetings Ethan claimed he handled solo that were actually run by his wife. Proposals he presented as his own that came directly from her files. Revenue forecasts adjusted to inflate his performance while minimizing hers. She looked at Ethan for the first time that night. Everything is time-stamped. The room erupted. Not shouting, worse. Whispers. Gasps. Phones coming out. People checking messages, pulling threads together in real time. Ethan shook his head. This is insane. You're all insane. I built this company. You made it what it is? The question came from the back of the room. Marcus Liu, our largest client. He stepped forward slowly, arms crossed. Because I distinctly remember choosing this firm based on a proposal your wife presented. One you tried to take credit for in our last meeting. A pause. She was too polite to correct you. I wasn't sure if I should say anything. He shrugged. Guess now's the moment. Another voice joined in. Then another. Clients confirming they worked primarily with me. Colleagues recalling projects I led that were later rebranded as team efforts. A pattern forming, clear, undeniable. A woman erased from her own success. Ethan stood at the center of it, shrinking as the truth grew louder around him. Logan had already started edging toward the exit. Self-preservation always wins eventually. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I think we're done here, I said, lifting my clutch from the table. Happy New Year, everyone. I look forward to working with many of you very soon. I walked out without looking back. The January air hit my face like a blessing, sharp, clean, honest. Behind me, the gala collapsed into chaos. Voices overlapping. Ethan's rising and falling as he tried to salvage something already gone. My phone buzzed. Claire, filed. It's done. Congratulations. I stood on the sidewalk as snowflakes caught in my hair and breathed deeper than I had in years. By January 3rd, Ethan's attorney contacted mine. There wasn't much to negotiate. The partnership agreement was airtight. The prenup solid. The documentation overwhelming. Logan tried to sue for breach of something vague and desperate. It collapsed when Marcus and 3 other major clients publicly announced they were following me. The firm Ethan loved hemorrhaged talent. Maya accepted my offer. So did 2 junior consultants who'd apparently been waiting for permission to leave. I didn't feel joy watching it fall apart. Not exactly. You don't celebrate someone's collapse when you remember loving them once. But I felt peace. Because his downfall wasn't my doing. I'd simply stopped holding him up. The collapse was entirely his. By February, I'd moved into a bright apartment overlooking the lake. Tall windows, soft gray walls, and sunlight spilling across shelves filled with books I'd never had time to read before. Meals for one, eaten in silence. No apologies. No pretending. Just me. Finally in a space that reflected my life, not someone else's narrative. March brought the official launch of my consultancy. Smaller than the old firm, more focused, entirely mine. The clients who followed me seemed relieved, not just to work with someone who actually understood their needs, but to work with someone who had always shown up, quietly leading while others claimed the spotlight. My mother visited in April. She walked through the office, eyes brimming. I never liked him, she admitted over lunch, but you seemed happy. I didn't say anything. I smiled softly. I seemed happy, I said. The tricky part, isn't it? Seeming versus being. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. Are you being happy now? I thought about it honestly. I'm being myself, I said. That's a start. And it was. The first time I saw Ethan after everything had settled, it was by accident. A coffee shop in late May. Both of us reaching for the same table. He looked older somehow. Grayer at the temples. Confidence worn down to a tired roar beneath the surface. You didn't have to destroy everything, he said quietly. I set my cup down. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just stopped pretending I was less than I am. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Finally, he nodded and walked away. I watched him leave and felt nothing. Not anger. Not victory. Just closure. Later that month, I had dinner with Marcus and his wife. They were expecting their first child, thrilled and terrified, the way new parents are. Over dessert, Marcus mentioned he'd heard Ethan was now consulting small projects, nothing significant. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Some people define themselves by what they can take from others. When you stop letting them take, they don't know who they are anymore. That night, I stood at my window. City lights shimmered on the water. My phone was silent. My calendar for tomorrow held meetings that mattered with people who valued what I brought to the table. I poured a glass of wine and thought back to that hallway 3 years ago, holding Ethan's dry cleaning, overhearing him laugh about my inevitable breakdown. He was so sure I'd crumble, so confident I'd accept whatever scraps he offered. He never understood something fundamental about me, or about any woman who's spent years building something real, while someone else takes credit. We don't crumble. We calculate. We watch. And when the moment comes, we don't need drama, tears, or public scenes. We just need the truth. And sometimes that's enough.